get started. Is there, first for public comment, the only thing we're going to discuss tonight is the budget. So if there's anybody who would like to, before we start, make a comment on the budget. Okay, then we'll get started. My goal tonight is to kind of try to bring everything together to see where we stand on this budget. There's been some other changes. And to get, we'll have Kathy go through a PowerPoint presentation of where we are now. Get final, any questions, not final, but any questions from board members, and then hopefully we'll get enough consensus to move to put this to a vote, post-final budget to a vote next Wednesday, I believe. So, with that in mind, I guess we'll get started, Kathy.
Okay. I'm basically doing the same presentation that I've done several times ago. The first, I'm going to give a review of the current status. Again, all options are still available to the board. The final decisions have been made. Again, we have received approval from PDE, approving us to apply the referendum exception to our budget if the board so desires. The Act 1 increase at 2.1% would generate 2.6272 mils. The referendum exception would generate 1.8874 mils. The total of those together, 3.6% increase. The revenue generated by the referendum, $1,114,804. And this is a change from the last presentation. I did get the median assessed property value. It is $30,430. So at the maximum allowable increase, the total increase for that homeowner would be $137.30. Board members, I made that change after you received your packet today, so I will be sending out a revised slide that shows these changes. And going through the 2014-15 budget timeline, we're down to budget discussions. We're here at April the 30th, actually May 1st, since last night's meeting was changed. As Mr. Sarnes indicated, our final proposed final budget adoption is scheduled for May 7th. And then we have the outlines of posting dates, public inspection, and dates that I have to have advertisements done. Final budget adoption is set for June the 10th. Then I move on to the revenue to expenditure summary. Basically this, revenue to expenditure summary. This is the slide that was presented at our last meeting on April the 8th. This is how things looked. We had a budget deficit. Revenues to expenditures of $1,932,399. During that meeting, we also had some discussions about reducing expenditures. This particular expenditure slide includes personnel changes related to retirements, program changes, and elimination of new positions are included on this slide. This evening, and I spoke with Mr. Sarnes, from the business office perspective, I would like to go away from this meeting tonight having an understanding of whether the final proposed budget will include the proposed personnel changes, or if the board will be adopting a budget out of balance with the personnel changes to be made at a later time. Either way is acceptable, except I do need to have a direction from the board this evening so that I can prepare the PDE 2028 for adoption on May 7th.
If you do the math, I think those changes amount to $2,054,164. So that's what the administration is recommending we can save under these items, which are basically personnel-related items, right, Dr. Redden?
That's right, that, Mr. Sardi said, just to review, that was in the decision brief that you received, so you do have that detailed, and I think Mrs. Johnson sent that to you again, as reference.
Revenue, there have been no changes at this time in revenue. Sometime next week, and we may have it prior to May 7th, we should be receiving the homestead, farmstead information from the state. If that information is received prior to the adoption of the May 7th budget, that would move some monies from local revenue into state revenue. If you remember the homestead, farmstead, that's the gambling money that we get from the state. However, I cannot include it in state revenue until the state tells me what they're going to give to me. So that would be an offsetting. It's not additional monies, it just moves it from local revenue to state revenue. This is the revenue chart. Mr. Sarnes asked that I show this, showing that local revenue accounts for, let's round this up, 79% of your budget, 21% thereabouts, less than 21% is state, and less than 1% comes from the federal government. So again, revenues, the district relies heavily on local revenues from earned income tax, from really transfer tax, and from the real estate tax. Salary and benefit information. Again, this is what this looked like earlier in the presentation. 70% of the expenditure budget related to salaries and benefits. We go on to the expenditures. Again, this is basically a recap with the changes that we had suggested last time at April 7th meeting. Okay. We were showing a increase of approximately $3.4 million over a number of different areas. Again, a chart showing how those expenditures play out as far as percentage of budget. Again, 70.5% of your budget is related to salaries and benefits. 5.35 is your professional technical services. Those are the things in the 300s that include payments to the IU. Your purchase property services are the 400 levels, which are exactly what they are, services that we pay for professionals to maintain properties. Our purchase services, the 500, is 6.58% of the budget, and that's where you'll find your tuitions to approved private schools, your tuitions to out-of-district placements, and your tuition for charter schools. Supplies account for 3.44% of your budget. Equipment, 0.92, less than 1% for new equipment. Dues and fees, 3.81%. Dues and fees does include our interest payments on our debt service. That's classified differently than principal payments, which makes up 7% of our budget. And then transfers, that's the money that we put aside for non-routine maintenance and technology. It would have included transportation, but we eliminated that this year. Again, there were some cost drivers. Mr. Sarnes and I worked on these that we thought was important for you to understand. Your purchase professional services, which is that 300 area that I discussed earlier. That increased over last year, $1.1 million. There were two main cost drivers there. One being substitute teacher service, and that really was a transfer between salaries. Last year when I did the budget, we had not gone into an agreement with substitute teacher service, so there would have been about $379,000, I think was the number, in salaries, and then the portion for PSERS and FICA would have added on to that, so it's about $570,000. So that really moves some monies from the 100 object codes and the 200 object codes down to the 300s, but when you look 300s to 300s, there's an increase. Other purchase services, again, your charter schools, this is the 500 object codes. Charter schools are up $607,796 from last year's budget, and placements, outside placements, including approved private schools, of $761,879 over last year. Our debt service payments last year to this year are up $655,374. So those were some of your major cost drivers for this year's budget. Mr. Sarnes and I also talked and drilled down a little bit further into tuition payments. Where are we paying tuition to? Charter schools, $1.8 million. The IU, $3,450,495. Other placements included approved private schools of $450,000. The Upper Bucks Technical School, that is a tuition that we pay, $2,931,664. Alternative placements, $197,163. Adjudicated and court place students, these are students at the court places, $4,300. And special ed placements, $1,083,135. So almost $10 million of our budget goes for tuition payments to educate our students elsewhere. I also thought it was important that the board see the history for charter schools. And actually, we have been down from 2009-10, and we're starting to inch up again. 12-13 we were down. 13-14 we're inching back up. If you look at the estimated for this year, it's 1.6 million compared to the 1.2 million that I had budgeted. Last year during our budget discussions, the board had discussed lowering those estimates for charter schools because we felt we were going to bring students back with bridges and working to hopefully to bring students back into the school. We did not bring, we may have brought some students back, I don't know if we brought, but obviously we didn't bring as many back, or they came back and some additional ones left. But we're estimating now for this year that we will spend 1.6 million. So I have in the budget next year 1.8 million, a slight increase actual to budget. Mr. Sarnes also asked that we look at some specific object codes and see how they compare to the entire budget. The first item that we're looking at, salaries. Again, salaries themselves constitute 48% of your budget, while the benefits part takes up 22% of your budget. 10% of the budget is for debt service. That includes both principal and interest payments. We have 2% of the budget allocated for charter schools. And then there's 18% of the budget remaining for all other operations. That's that's your supplies, that's your equipment, that's the heating and air conditioning, gasoline for the buses, and all the other things that we need to run the school district. I also thought it important that the board see the PSERS history. I'm showing that 2014 to 2018. And what I'm showing in this slide is the net increase to the budget over the next 4 years. Again, I made some assumptions. I made the assumptions that our salaries were going to be the same as the payroll in 13-14. That's just my assumption. So you can make the assumption if salaries go up, the net increase to the budget is going to go up as well. So I used the actual here. Showing that this year we need approximately $1.3 million more for PSERS than we did last year. In 2016, we're going to need another $1.3 million more than what we need this year. It goes down slightly in 2017 to just $1 million. And right now, with the actuarial tables in 2018, the rate of increase goes down considerably. So again, I think all these things are important, that we have more than just a single year look on some of the items that are very costly to us, that being PSERS. And as we know, right now the only way to control PSERS increases is to decrease the salaries. Tax bill history, put one more in. The tax bill history, this actually was in your previous slide. I did update this to show the changed homestead median assessed value to $30,430, except I will have to change the slide for the increase. The increase is not $105.50. The increase is $137. The increase is closer to $138, so I will, I will print that out. It's $137.38 on the increase. This is actually the old slide that was in here. So at the median assessed value, $30,430, the maximum increase is $137.38.
first slide, you have the median assessed property is 35,000.
I changed that, maybe, I did say that I had changed that. I made some changes, the median assessed value, 30,430, I just received that information this afternoon, Mrs. Yarnel. After this was presented, after this was prepared. So 30,430 is the median assessed that we received today from Bucks County. And that, at the maximum assessed value, a maximum tax increase, 137.38 would be the maximum increase for that individual.
That means Barry Casper's gonna get his taxes.
That, of course, is based on the mean.
That's,
I moved.
that's,
On the mean, the average.
no, it's the median. It is the median. It is, if there's 50% people above it and 50% below it. I have not received the average assessment yet, Mr. Denning.
Was 137 the mill, or that, what was the 137?
137.38 would be the maximum
Dollar
tax
amount. Okay,
increase.
okay.
Maximum tax
I
increase.
thought you were
And
saying that was the mill.
No, and that is a 3.6% increase. So if you go to the maximum, Act 1 index, maximum with the referendum exception, you're looking at a 3.6% increase in the tax rate. And again, I will get this slide out to all the board members with the changes that were made after you received your packet today, and actually after these were printed.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Are there any specific other questions on any of this information?
Kathy,
Yes, Mr. Thompson?
this assumes some drawdown. I noticed the drawdown on the health trust fund.
That was already factored into the reductions in the benefits area.
Okay. And that was $1.5 million or something like that?
That's correct, it was 1,500,000.
Thank you.
Is that as much as you want to go there? How are we doing with that? I mean, another couple of months have gone by. That's been in the budget for a while now, right? You kind of took that out 60 days ago?
I took that out early April, I did talk with Mr. Allen, he found 1,500,000. We were okay with taking that out, not taking more out of this particular time. So, again, I can look at that for the next personnel budget, personnel committee meeting. I think we have one of those coming up before, when do we have one of those coming up?
June.
Oh, okay. I can get that information out to the board. Mr. Solis, how did you want to present that?
He wants a vote on this.
Um,
Not due to the end of the
well, what,
Typically, we do it first,
well, what are we,
the medical information.
okay. Well, that's fine, yeah, I mean, if that's, is that, do we do that in a public meeting, or?
No.
Okay, that's what I thought, usually that's,
Part of negotiations.
yeah. So, I mean, just so people understand, you know, we are currently in negotiations with both our support staff. Their contract expired actually last year. They're working without a contract, and we're in negotiations with our teacher, the professional group. Their contract expires in June. That kind of limits what we can do with our health plan right now. I mean, the $1.5 million that we're talking about is just our fund that we have. I want to explain it right, Kathy, but it's...
No, actually.
Well, it's actually, yes, we've reduced, our cost is going to be lower by $1.5 million, we estimate. I'm sorry, yes, that's correct. But that's just, we didn't make any changes, that's just, right, we're estimating that
Right, we're
experience is
right,
going to be-
we're estimating that the experience that when I started this budget back in October, we thought our experience was going to continue to grow exponentially. It has not grown to that amount, so we were able to reduce the anticipated expenditure out of the general fund by $1.5 million. So basically what that does is it reduces the pseudo rates for which are developed for both the district and for the employees. There's a 5% increase on the rates that have been developed rather than a 10%. So it's basically a difference between a 10% increase and a 5% increase in the rates.
Kathy,
Yes.
was explained to me from council that the real contract from the negotiations is predicated on the benefit schedules that are in the contract. All this is our estimates on our cost plans, and as such, we can change it as long as we keep the trust balance actuarially sound. And according to the actuaries, we are within our rights to do this. That's a fair statement?
Yes, that's a fair statement. We are funding the liability for the claims that we are incurring. So yes, that is true.
Thank you.
Okay, so basically, contractually, there isn't a whole lot we can do right now until, as we go, going through negotiations. That's why I wanted that area to be shown, you know, that's 70% of our budget, so, but in spite of that, we were able to, or the administration has proposed over $2 million worth of some savings that we can get there. Obviously, the other areas, the debt service, we did do a bond refunding. We saved some money there, but once again, that's a one-year little blip, right?
Well, actually, if you recall, I don't want to say re-amortized, but we actually restructured our bond issues so that we will have a flat debt service. Now next year, there's a $600,000 blip back in the budget next year because we do need to have $1.3 million, but next year meaning 15-16, not 14-15. So we will be funding $1.3 million continuously, I think through like 2020, if I remember correctly. I did not bring that debt service schedule. It's a flat 1.3, maybe 13 million, and then it drops off significantly for a number of years.
Right.
So that $655,000 increase that's in there, that's just for 14-15, and you're saying it'll be flat after that?
No, it will be another $600,000 next year.
And
We originally had $13 million budgeted, but when the bond sale happened, and the way it was structured, this year's debt service is down $600,000. We wanted to flatten it out at $13 million, but how it straightened out when the numbers all shook out, there was a $600,000 less this year, 14-15 in the budget. So we did take it out to balance the budget, but we know next year it has to come back in. So we can do one of two things. We can put it back in this year and just know that we're not going to spend it, but what would happen, you'd still be showing a larger deficit for no reason. There's no reason to put it in there and show a larger deficit. We just know next year that we're looking for $600,000 for debt service right off the bat, and we're looking for $1.1 million or more for PSERS. So next year, we either need to have a tax increase to cover, almost $1.9 million that we already know. Today I can sit here and tell you next year I need $1.9 million more than what we have this year in
We're
budget.
already into the index already before we start.
We're already into the index before we get out of the gate. $1.9 million next year. PSERS debt service.
Assuming no cost savings.
yeah, so but you're saying that our debt service right now is around just
12.6.
under 12 million?
12.6. It's 12.6.
But
And it'll be 13.2 next year.
okay.
But 13.2, I'm sorry, yeah, okay. 12.6 in the
14.
14, 15 budget. I'm sorry, well, I'm working in too many years. 14, 15 is 12.6, which is next year. The year following that, the debt service is 13.2.
So it's 12 million this year?
12.6.
No, this current year,
12,
this
yes,
current
12,
fiscal year.
yes.
And then
Like
it's
11,
going up to
right.
12.6 million
That's
next year.
correct.
I have a question about the revenue. This is a number on the slide, but the revenue to expenditure summary, with 13-14 is 114 million, and then 14-15 January is 117, and so now it's 120. So And then you also said in 2 slides later, when you broke it down by local, state, and federal, you said that you showed no change in revenue, but from January to April,
We,
the predictions have gone up. And I know you said it might move after the.
right, and it did go up, and
So why?
but the, from 117 to the 120 was the 1.1, and I'm sorry, it didn't change from the last time we met. The revenue was the 1.1 for the Act 1 index, and it was an additional $1 million for earned income tax. So I said I felt comfortable putting that into the budget. And $600,000 in increase for state funding. So that's what changed from April 7th until today.
So 1.1 million.
And some change in
Act 1 index, you mean the
Referendum
the
exemption.
referendum
Referendum
exemption?
exemption.
And then 1 million for,
earned income tax.
that, oh, so you're estimating that's gonna go up?
Yes.
Okay. And how do you make that projection?
Looking at this, looking at the 12-13 actual, looking at what we're getting in 13-14, and looking at historicals
Okay. And then 600,000 more
in state revenue.
from the state.
Did you show, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to bring up, I heard today that the state is falling further behind on their current year revenue. I think they project now that there'll be at least 500 million or so to 600 million under, less than what they projected they would get this year. So who knows what's going to happen next year. They said they'll already start next year with about $1 billion deficit. So just keep that in mind.
There's probably not a lot of help coming from the state, I think that's what Mr. Attorney is saying.
Go ahead, Barry.
Is there a slide that shows last year's tuition, or did you mention that? I didn't catch that, if you did.
No, we didn't.
Is that up? And I was just wondering.
We did. I didn't break it out, no, that one.
Is there any hope here anywhere down, like in the future for this stuff? I mean,
Well, charter schools, I mean, I know that we're trying to get students back for charter schools. You know, we have special education placements that, again, Dr. Phillips would need to talk about that. I mean, those are their two largest areas of, you know, if you take out the VOTAC, I mean, VOTAC, that's our VOTAC. Those are the largest areas where we're having increases. And charter schools, unless there's a change in the charter school law, there's not.
the IU.
We get the bill, and if we don't pay it, the state takes it from us.
Just to help me, what drives the IU number up or down? It never goes down, it looks like, but what are, and I may have missed that, I'm sorry if I did, but what are we paying for there? If you,
Okay, the
that doesn't put you on the spot, like, what are some of the things you're paying?
Actually, Dr. Phillips would be the one to answer that. But the ones where it's tuition, we're paying for students that are in IU programs that are not, they're in IU operated programs.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I
That's what-
can't,
that's what-
I don't know, if someone sits on the IU board that knows what programs that we participate in. I don't, because I'm not that intimately involved with those.
Is he gonna come back and present more information? Yeah. Yeah, I thought that's what we requested the last time he was here.
He's not, I mean, he wasn't available tonight.
Well, I'm not saying tonight, I'm just saying before we finish the budget.
Well, what specifically are you looking for?
More explanation of, you know, what are placements approved private schools? Why is that up 700,000? And the 500,000 for the IU?
I can respond a little bit to that, just based on personal experience. Approved private schools are because placements are not, students' needs are not able to be met within the district.
Well, I understand that, but why is it going up 700,000 this year over?
They may, you don't know what the population, how it changed.
So,
That actually is the biggest thing for that with the approved private schools.
Parents
We-
sue.
There are, how do I want to put this? There are students that actually live in Pennridge that, how much I can say about this? That you may have never set foot in a Pennridge school district building, but are in an approved private school. And we get, I got a $400,000 surprise. That was something that we were not anticipating for a number of students that we had no idea. The state sends the bill and says, here's your bill for the approved private schools for the students that, again, and they're residents of our district. So we had to put something in the budget.
Some of it, Christine, is that some of these students are in the very expensive placements, and when their families move into Pennridge, the bill comes to us. We've never seen them, and they've never been in the other school district. We had one, they may move from North Penn into Pennridge, but then Pennridge gets the bill. The placements never change, but the district of residence pays for those bills. So some of those we have no control over, just because they move into the school district. And that's happened in the past several years, and some expensive bills too.
And Mrs. Miller's right, I mean, you just don't know how many you're going to get, how many students, and we try everything we can, least restricted environment, we try everything we can to keep them here. But say, for example, Overbrook School, the blind, we can't accommodate that child, so that's very expensive, so we have to transport and pay for that tuition.
And I understand a few years ago you brought them back into the district.
We try.
Yeah. From like IU programs.
oh yeah, I have another question about this. You had the substitute teachers and you said it moved from the 100 and 200 object code and 300 object code, so, and it's an increase of $570,000, so are the other...
Just in that object code.
Right, so are the other ones being offset? I mean, is it being reduced by the same amount, 570,000?
I can't say if it's total 579,000 until I take out all the other budget adjustments that we put in, because we moved money out of those 100, 200 object codes, but then we put in all the new requests that were in. So I think once I take out the new requests, I'll be able to.
I would just like to know, because you said it was a shifting of codes, or because we're going from hiring our own substitutes to contracting them out, but so then that actually wouldn't be a cost driver, right?
Well, it's a cost driver in that object code. We were looking object code to object code. We were comparing objects to objects, and yes, it is, because that did go up, and the reason it went up is because we moved the money from the 100s and 200s into the 300s.
But it's not an actual increase to the budget.
No.
Hi, David.
Bar's open.
Dave died.
I think on that issue, Christine, we're going to need, this is the first year, right, that we've done the substitutes, so we're going to have to get some history on that. And there is obviously a fee for paying the company for these substitutes, but then we're supposedly going to get savings on the healthcare benefits on it. So it's, Kathy, I think, did the best she can to estimate what we're going to pay, but until we really have a full year of history, we're not going to know.
Actually, Mr. Scarpantoni was able to provide me with the number
Your call
of...
has been forwarded to an automatic.
Mr. Scarpantoni was able to provide me with the number of substitute days that we had in 12-13 and 13-14. So we used those number of days, we averaged those out, we took it times the rate of $95, and that's how we came up with the number. So it's the best estimate that we have to go with, times their rate. So it's a number that's based on some data behind it.
Are you finished, Christine? Mm-hmm. I have a question on bridges, Matt, for you. I thought last year, if I recall, I thought the board had requested a plan that you were going to devise to bring students back in, that it wasn't just going to be like a willy-nilly approach, that it was actually going to be a constructive plan to bring them back. How's that working?
We called every student, we had principals call every cyber charter school student and sent out some media materials for bridges, and those calls did get some students back. I could say not as much as we'd like to, although I don't know where our expectations were. We continue to try to, when situations come up, try to encourage students to enter into bridges rather than leaving the district and going to cyber charter school. We've had a couple of middle school students who have used bridges to actually get them back in, but you're doing a partial schedule. So we have advertised with people. I meet with the guidance counselor at the high school who runs bridges at the high school every other week to discuss this. And
So is advertised, you say? Did I?
yeah, we sent out we sent out materials, pamphlets, advertising to charter school students in the district that reside in the district. And
Have you pulled them in like for have you pulled them in for like a presentation and
but to be honest, many are not receptive to our communications.
so how can you change that?
Yeah, and it's.
What can you do differently? No, what can you do differently?
I mean, I know that when I interact with them
that's
directly, yeah, I mean, it's, part of the challenge of this is, I know when we made those phone calls, many of them, quickly hung up as soon as the person identified themselves. That was something that hurt from a number of the principals, they made these phone calls. So,
Well, why are they, why do you think they're hanging up?
I couldn't say case by case. I mean, I would venture to guess that there's students who enter charter schools because they're dissatisfied with the district in some way. I mean, I couldn't say. I do know that one of the challenges with charter school students, there are a number of charter school students that enter charter school because they're facing truancy issues with the district, and it's a way for them to at least in the short term avoid that. And a number of the new ones that we've seen were in that position this year. I actually can't elaborate on details of those student records, but we do come across that. And I think, unfortunately, one of the phenomena of cyber charter school is it tends to attract exactly the wrong type of student. And that's something that we face with bridges, is we've had a number of students who have started bridges with us, and we responsibly have, we've been responsible in that if they are not responsible themselves, we intervene and try to get more out of them. And that creates a precarious situation because I think some of the reason that they're avoiding this environment in the first place is because they're not being responsible. So it's tough. I mean, we can't spend the kind of money on marketing that they do. I mean, I hear commercials for them every day when I'm driving on the radio. I see commercials on the television, and they I shared some numbers last year that they spend a lot of money on marketing. So it's tough to compete with that, especially if you have a student who's getting disciplined for a truancy issue or something like that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Matt, do you know what the percentage is of like brick and mortar type charter school students as opposed to cyber charter?
No, I don't. I think Kathy and I could probably work with Judy Rogers to collect that information for you. I would say comfortably that the vast majority is cyber charter. Yeah.
Is this our system or his or Dave's system?
I don't know. He's on his cell phone. He's on his cell phone.
Probably walk out of the room. He's probably still talking.
We tried. All right.
I was just wondering, you have the $1.1 million in here for the teachers committed funds. I'm wondering what's going to be the future, what's going to happen in the future with that? How much money is left, and then when we run out of using that, I mean, we're going to have a hole to fill.
Well, you have to think about for every dollar that you take out of PSERS, out of the reserve, you have to eventually find that somewhere else, because next year, not only are you going to need to find the 1.3 for the PSERS increase, you're either going to need to find the 1.1 million somewhere. So now we're up to looking for 2.4 million. We're already at 600,000 in there for, well, we're closer now to like $3 million, starting off next year's budget. So if you, because for, you have to replenish it somehow, because eventually those reserves are gonna run out. If I use $1,000,001 this year, I'm gonna need to I either need to raise taxes $1,000,001 to cover that $1,000,001, or next year I need to take that $1,000,001 out again. So we have about $8 million in there, so you can take $1 million out each year, but when you extracted the $8 million, you still need to find $8 million to replace it because the monies didn't go away. You still have that liability.
But how much was used last year, or in this?
Zero. We haven't used anything.
In this current
This
fiscal
is
year?
current year, we won't be using it.
We're just gonna raise taxes.
And how about last year and then?
No, we haven't used any, we have not used anything out of PSERS reserve. We had balanced the budget this year, with anticipating that we would use PSERS. As of right now, it does not appear that I'm going to have to use PSERS because the EIT is coming in at $1 million higher than what I anticipated.
Okay.
So,
I have two questions relative to charter schools, which is a fair chunk of change in your tuition. How many charter school students do we have?
130.
Roughly, is it 50, is it 100? 230? I'm just kind of curious. Do we know?
I don't.
I believe it's between 50 and 100.
It's
That's not a quotable number.
That's fine. Take either number's okay with me. My second question on that is, if they didn't go to charter schools and came here, what would the impact be on our budget just from an overall standpoint? I think there would be some. You'd need to hire some additional teaching possibly.
No.
Do we have a good analysis of that? Should we? And I'm not saying we should. My question to the finance committee, should we have that kind of analysis?
Yeah, but what assumption are you gonna make on how many of them you recover? Well, the point is this. You have
I
to
think
know
the tricky
how
part
many
about
you
that,
have,
Mr.
what
Demming,
they're
is you
worth
don't
each.
know what classes they would be in, and they would be spread across different grade levels. So, yes, to your point, I'm sure we would have to hire at least a few teachers, but I don't know if we would exactly
You
fit
get,
that.
Because if you look at this,
but it
you
costs you
almost
money
can
to
make
bring
the
them back because you have to hire
assumption,
them.
as
That's where
an
you get
engineer, I would, and it would be stupid, but engineers. That
Well, that's
if
the
you could
amount.
get rid of that, there would be a net savings in that whole.
Well, I think the easiest thing, maybe one of the ways to look at this, when a new student comes in the door, we don't hire, it doesn't, how do I say this? It's about $18,000 to educate a student. But not every student costs us $18,000 when they come in the door. Because again, we aren't hiring new teachers every time.
There's bigger areas.
So it is much, the new student coming in, we have lots of new students coming in who are not, even in the good year when we're hiring, growth teachers, Dr. Navarro, if we hire 4 growth teachers, but that's $280,000. So the cost is much less here, even if we have to add teachers, than sending them to charters.
I don't disagree with that, I'm just saying it would be interesting to know what the impact would be. So you have know my view. I'm not particularly fond of charter schools. Questions somewhere? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Are we gonna continue to look for any other cost savings so we don't have to take the referendum exception?
Well, that's obviously one of the questions on the table. My question would be where, if you're talking $1 million, where are we going to get $1 million? If out of that 21 million, it's kind of what I would call maybe where we could find some more savings.
Is it out of the 21 million?
Right, the 21 million, that's out of the 18
18%.
that's really the pot that's like supplies and whatever. And we've already taken a lot out of that. That includes, I believe, the equipment that we're leasing for the one-on-one. which we decided to lease instead of buy.
School buses.
Yeah, we got rid of the school buses that we were gonna buy. I mean, I don't know, how much do you wanna cut?
Just a question.
No, it's a good question. I mean, I asked the same question. That's why I wanted this chart, because I wanted to see where we could possibly get some more savings. But, you know, it's not very encouraging when you kind of look at it.
In the decision brief that we have, it has the delay of the bus purchase. Is that, wasn't it an option also just to take it out of the capital
Right,
funds instead of the
right,
general fund?
right,
Is
we
that
took
what
it out
we're
of
doing?
capital, that's correct.
So we're not actually delaying the purchase, we're just removing where it's coming from?
Or we might delay, I mean, we have that
Yeah,
decision,
but-
the decision hasn't been made.
Right, I mean, you know, that's something, you know, we borrowed the 10 million to hopefully pump up the capital fund and get us through the next several years, but, you know, that's also something we gotta look at, because we're not funding that through here, so, we have to keep that in mind too, for future years, so. Yeah, that's one question, that's possibly on the table. Another, you know, the obvious question, is there enough support, for the referendum exception, the additional 1.5%? Because if there's not, that's another big kind of hole we would have to fill somewhere, either out of fund balance or trying to come up with some more cuts.
Can I go back to what you're asked Christine? I think you said, well, where else would you want to look for cuts? And our claim funds run July to July. Is that how we track that? So wherever we're at now, we'll start from zero again on July 1. Is that right? So the one place I would think that we might have a shot to get some money is maybe try to be more aggressive where we thought we would be on reimbursed claims versus paid claims versus where we are. And I know you said you already went to Steve Allen, and he came back, I believe you said at 1.5 million would be, is that what the number?
Right, we went from a 10% increase to a 5% increase.
And I understand how you're trying, that has to affect the rates and the contract, I get all that. But I'm talking about the money that we didn't spend, that we thought we were going to spend, maybe aggressively, and we're in June, well, we're only May. See what I'm saying? I think if I'm basically gambling, is what I'm saying. Okay? Like we're saying, okay, we should have $1 million surplus, but we have 4. So, you know, maybe it's better.
In healthcare claims?
I am.
Okay, you're talking about the healthcare fund?
I am. Okay. And I know you said that they looked at it and he feels that we need to, the most we could tap it is 1.5. So all I'm saying, if I understand what you said. And I say this every year, I think if we can be aggressive there, we should, to take, because it's our money. It's the district's
I mean,
money.
I can certainly go back and.
That's my only
and look
suggestion
at-
to
We
Bill.
can go back and look at it, so you would be suggesting that we would underfund the healthcare fund, reduce the funding in the general fund and underfund the healthcare fund.
What I'm saying is,
That's, I think that's what you're asking me. I think that's what I heard.
well, I am, and you know, they have guidelines they like to follow. So, but, you know, sometimes maybe we need to go outside of that and gamble. That's why I use that word gamble. And maybe it's not that big of a gamble for us, because we're 10 months into our plan, and if we're in better shape. I know you don't like doing this, I get it. And I don't like saying this. I don't like saying it.
It's the future, because it's the same thing that happened with Peasers. You know, Peasers had a huge pot of money, and then they also started gambling, and now we have an underfunded Peasers. We need to make, I mean, again,
Well, the
we have.
difference is the money's still in our pocket.
That's
The
true.
difference.
We can certainly have, Conrad C. will come back and do the actuarial study again. We can ask, you know, I'm more than happy to ask Mr. Allen and look at it again. Again, we need to be careful that we don't get ourselves too far in the hole with our claims, that, you know, rather than having a nice 5% increase, we're going to be asking for a 23% increase. You know, that's the thing that we have to be careful of.
That's the gamble.
Yeah, that is the gamble. Again, we're self-insured. You know, I don't know, you know, how many, small to large claims that we're gonna have that would negatively impact us. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, so we do have to look at some of the actuarial things. But we can certainly go back and ask Mr. Allen to look at it again, if there's any way we could, reduce that healthcare again by some amount.
And we did that
Thank you.
last
We
year
did
or 2
that,
years.
we did that this year. We did that this year,
Right.
and now this is 2 years in a row. And if you
Yeah.
remember when Conrad Siegel was here,
I
they
know,
said,
they were.
you need to be very careful about how you start underfunding this, because you should always be funding at what trends are, and we're underfunding what trends are at 5%.
Well, we also have 2 outstanding unsettled contracts, which I think leaves us in a more difficult position in the sense that it's more uncertain.
Yeah.
Won't they spend it?
I mean,
Let them go on strike.
I don't know how long that would take.
Well, they're gonna hang on to 8
I
million,
guess-
save money.
We still have till June 10th, so if we can certainly inquire, I think that's,
So, since I interrupted you, I think this is okay. I would be supporting it moving forward, but I would like to see if that could be something that comes into play, in the last minute.
Well, sure.
So that's.
as I said, yeah, I mean, it's not that we have to do it next week, we have till June 10th, so Kathy can, we can get Steve Allen and check on that and see what their recommendation would be.
We don't always have to take his recommendation. Just say.
Well, not so much Steve's, I would think an actuary,
I know.
okay.
It's advice.
Well, yes, that begs another question. If that's going to cost us something, obviously, if we're going to do another study, I don't know how long it would take, but.
I'm not saying do a whole study. I'm saying if you're running a business and you need to come up with, you need to close the gap, and you're going to say, well, I have this money here, and I really shouldn't take it, but it looks like I'm not going to use it this year. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying it applies to the public sector, okay? But the question was, where else can we go? And they're the 2 piles of money that I see without making more cuts. So that was, to me, was an easy question. And I'm a believer in taking that gamble, because that's what we used to do, so.
What's the second pile?
Well, there's the Peasers thing, you didn't touch
Oh,
that.
no, yeah.
Okay, well, Kathy, we'll check into that, see if, and we'll have to discuss it, it's not just you, yeah, we'll have to discuss
Can't be
it.
just me.
Any other comments or suggestions?
So what would happen if we took more from the Peasers Reserve Fund? I mean, we just have a bigger hole to fill the following year.
You don't have a hole to fill, that's what it's there.
Right, I mean, we have 2 fund balances, we have the Peasers fund balance, or we have our regular fund balance. I mean, yes, but obviously, when you look ahead, with two contracts going to be settled, and hopefully, and Peasers, which we know about, it's, and we went 2 years, that we're not even making up what we didn't get those 2 years is the other thing, which is what that slide shows. So,
Would be 12.17.
yeah, if we had, yeah,
What a
which
crying
is,
shame.
one of the reasons we're in the situation we are.
Oh,
So,
bullshit.
Not only did the resident people in Harrisburg say that they were behind the 8 ball, so to speak, but Standard & Poor's apparently has slammed the governor's budget as being unsustainable, among other terms, not a particularly favorable thing to do. What are the chances that your number actually won't come to fruition in terms of the state budget? Because unfortunately, as I see it, they've made so little progress so far that the likelihood of having this in any sort of finalized form before June 10th or even June 30th is not great.
Well, at this point, it's $600,000. Again, we may be looking, if we pass the budget with the $600,000, in there, and it doesn't come to fruition, we may have to be looking, we pass the budget, we start the school year, there may be other things that we're gonna have to start saying no to. It would be, and I believe in 2008, was it 2008, the board actually, I think there were two budgets for the slates, so that we would have to be thinking really hard, maybe for some things that we have planned to do, and there are things we should do, but we may not be able to do them. And again, I think for me, it's the biggest question for me really is on the expenditure side regarding the unsettled contracts. That to me is more unsettling than the governor's budget at this point.
Okay, so once again, the two big things in here are the referendum, additional money, and then the proposed, the $2 million adjustment to salaries and benefits. Is everybody comfortable with those? Because that's what...
Can you ask them one at a time?
No, it's just give me your comments both, because we're just trying to move this along. We're supposed to be done by 8:30, so. I just need to know if there's, I want to make sure that we have the 5 votes to vote on this next week, so.
So you're asking for the referendum exception and the...
But as is included here,
Right.
or would you support it? That's what I'm asking.
No, would you take it to the vote?
For a proposed, not that it's, we still have a month till June 10th, but as is, would you, that's what I'm asking. I just want to get, make sure I have 5 people who would support it.
Bill, I know you can't take a vote, but I don't think it's a fun thing to do, but I think it's something we need to do as responsible board members. Okay?
Thank you.
We're going down the way.
Mhm.
I don't support the PSERS exception. I'll support the Act 1 index, but not the PSERS.
You're all right with the salary reductions that we
Yes.
talked about?
Oh, yes,
Um,
yes.
And where would you propose then we make that up?
I'd like to hear, more discussion on what Barry just offered.
Well, we're gonna do that too.
Well, we're going to do that anyway, yes.
I think you'll still get 5, but that's where I stand.
All right, thanks. All right.
Yeah, I already said, we're this far, we've seen the cuts, reductions, so we have to keep moving, and I don't like it, but, what are we gonna do? I mean, this is the way it's gonna be for the future. I don't see how, unless we, as we keep the same amount of students and staff, we're gonna be looking at these numbers. I don't see any 0% down the road coming up like we used to. So, yeah, I'm gonna support to make this, keep moving.
Steve?
Yeah, I agree. I'd like to see what Barry brought up, just to see if there is anything there, possibility, but I think we've got to keep moving forward.
I think we've made progress, and, from where we were even a month ago, so, I think that's a good thing.
Good way to put it.
Yeah, we've made progress, so I would hope that we would keep looking, that Dr. Radigan and Mrs. Johnson keep looking, in addition to Mr. Casper's suggestion. So, you know the budget better, you know the budget much better than we do, so that's so I'll support it on Tuesday, and my request is that everyone keeps looking for more places to save.
I agree, and I appreciate the effort that's been made here. What we've seen, movement and all of this over the past couple of months. I agree with what Barry's saying, if there's only so many places to look for money, I think we seriously have to look at that, and especially, in regard to that referendum. I don't like taking the PSERS because we're just putting ourselves in the hole, but like Barry said,
Well, hopefully we won't have to use it like we...
Yeah, so I will support it as proposed.
Thank
think the question was phrased as comfortable, and the answer is no. But having said that, and the reason I say that is because for the first time, I believe since I've been on board,